Wow. Hi, everybody. How you doing? I'm so glad we're all here together. Look at this. I wanted to take a selfie, okay? Can we do that? I can't really see you. I'm not sure how well this is going to go, but we're going to try, okay? Okay, just hold on. Hold on, hold. Look at that face. That is so silly. Okay, here. Okay, pretend like you're happy, okay? Ready, steady, open source. Oh, so good. Thank you, thank you. That is so nice. Oh, I love it, I love it, I love it. I haven't been to JFocus since yesterday. So that's nice. This is great. You know, people always ask me why I take those photos, and it's always the same old answer. I show them to my daughter, and I say, see, they listen to me. So there's that. Hi, my name is Josh. I work on the Spring team. I'm a Java champion, a Microsoft MVP. By the way, that surprised me as much as anybody. A former Kotlin GD, huge fan of Kotlin, of course, still. I run a little YouTube channel with my buddy Deshaun and James Ward and Deshaun Carter. I'm very online, as the kids like to say. Here's my LinkedIn. The code we're going to look at today, you know what? Let's just change that right now. What day are we? 03. I'll put this there, okay? I haven't created that repository just yet, but whatever I type today, we'll put it in there, and then, you know, here's email and all that. You can find me on the intertubes. Look, I'm really excited. We've got a new, it's 2026, new year, and a new version of Spring, right? Spring Framework 7 came out last year, and with it, a brand new generation was unleashed. And, you know, we start with Spring Framework, obviously, and so Spring Framework, the lower part, right? And you got that, and then you've got projects that build on it, like Spring Data, Spring Integration, Spring Security, Spring Batch, Spring Shell. I mean, no, actually, that comes up a little bit later. Anyway, a bunch of these projects. Then you got Spring Boot, which provides the auto configuration. And then you got projects that depend on Spring Boot, like Spring Modulith, Spring Cloud, gRPC for the moment. We'll talk about that one in a second. And what's the other one? AI, right? And so these projects all depend on Spring Boot. So really, the talk is called Spring Boot 4, but, you know, I don't know where's the, like, there is no GA version of Spring AI that is compatible with Spring Boot 4. So in one respect, you might say that the release train isn't done yet, right? Give it a few more months, and then everything will be Boot 4 or better. But in the meantime, everything but Spring AI actually does have a GA version built against Spring Boot 4. Nice, right? Very simple. So this is, I think, kind of an interesting place to sort of start our expectations. Certainly, most of us start our projects in terms of Spring Boot 4. So I'll start there. But bear in mind, I'm going to just show you a bunch of projects and a bunch of cool things. And they're not all specific to just Spring Boot. It's a portfolio, obviously, okay? So we're going to just build an application, as always, by going to my second favorite place on the internet. Obviously, my first favorite place is production. I love production. You should love production. You should go as early and often as possible. Bring the kids, bring the family. The weather's amazing. It's the happiest place on earth. It's better than Disneyland. But if you've never been there, you can begin your journey here at start.spring.io. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a new application. And we have some choices, as always, to make before we can get underway. First and foremost, what build tool would you like to use? I've chosen Maven. I'm a fan. You can use whatever you like. What version of Java do you want to use? Here, there is only one answer, right? There are 3 radio boxes, but only one valid choice. You understand? So while Spring Boot 4 supports Java 17 as a baseline, still, to my chagrin, I wouldn't start a new project in 2024. 2025, I mean, certainly not 2026, but even 2025, I wouldn't start a new project without being on Java 25 or better, right? And bear in mind, we are closer to Java 26 than we are to Java 25 at this point. So I'm a big fan of Java 25. It has one of my all-time Double Dutch favorite features ever. So let me show you that, okay? So open this up, and I'm going to go in here, and I'll just type this little program, and we'll say io.println hi. And then write that out, and then I'm just going to run this. I'm not going to compile it. I'm going to run it like a script. Do you know what just happened? Do you see what just happened? Right? I ran my Java like a script. Do you understand what just happened? The first time in 30 years, a good Java script. Okay? First time. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And by the way, this script, notice that it is like me. It has no class, right? So if you look at that, no class whatsoever, right? The best. This is the best. Java's an amazing language. I would be on Java 25 if nothing else, okay? Or Kotlin. Kotlin is amazing. Okay, so we're going to call this adoptions, and I'm going to build a service to help adopt animals. So we'll bring in the GraalVM native image support. We'll bring in the web support. We're going to bring in Postgres. We're going to bring in Spring Data JDBC. We're going to bring in the HTTP client support. Notice that I have a separate dependency here for HTTP client versus the web support, right? Historically, we had all the configuration, all the auto configuration lived in one jar. It's called spring-boot-auto-configure. And in that one jar, you have every class that Spring Boot ships that provides configuration for you. So when you brought in a starter dependency, that starter dependency had no code. All it had were Maven dependencies that in turn brought in code, right? So the starter itself was empty. It's just a shell that brings in transitive dependencies. Those dependencies, once they're on the class path, activate certain conditions in the autoconfig that's in that one big monolithic Spring Boot autoconfigure jar. But this made it difficult for us to get very clear signals about your intent. Remember, the presence of types on the class path is an expression of intent in Spring Boot, right? You add Spring Boot starter web in the past, what do? You get a web server. Well, web is also, when you think about it, maybe I want to talk to a web service, not just be a web service. So Spring Boot starter web also brought in the REST client and the REST template. What if I just want the REST client and the REST template? Not the web server. Well, you had both. You set a property to turn off the web server. Well, now we have separate starters. Isn't that nice? So, you actually have, you can still use Spring Boot Starter Web, but now there's a new Spring Boot Starter Web MVC, which looks more or less like WebFlux, the Spring Boot Starter WebFlux, in terms of the symmetry of the name. And we have a separate starter that brings in the REST client support and the REST template with it, because it's a dependency. Isn't that nice? So nice, clear, more modular auto-configuring. The way we did that, of course, is by relegating the auto configuration not to one giant monolithic auto config jar, but to the respective starters to which they belong. Big deal. Nice stuff. Okay. Do I need anything else in there? These are questions. GraalVM, web, data, JDBC, Postgres, the web stuff. I don't know. I feel like that's a lot. Security. Let's bring in the security stuff. You can't have too much security. Web. There we go. Okay. That's a new starter, by the way, WebAuthn. That's nice. I like that a lot. Okay, so downloads. Oh, you know what? We'll do this as a Modulith application also, because I love Modulith. How many of you have heard of or played with Modulith? Modulith. Oh, that is. I'm only seeing a scant few hands, which means I have come to the right place. So open this up. Here we are. By the way, that was UAO. If you look at this, which UAO, it is pointing to yet another JavaScript. This is the good kind, not the bad kind, right? So it's just another JavaScript, and all it does is, you guessed it, unzip and open my zip files. Okay, so we're going to be building an application to help adopt dogs from my fictitious dog adoption agency called Pooch Palace. So, of course, first things first, I'll connect to my database. Did I specify Postgres? I hope I did. Postgres, yeah, it's there. Postgres, so I'll bring in Postgres localhost. And by the way, you might notice that I'm moving a little slowly today, okay? Last year, I embarked upon a spiritual journey. I'm learning Vim motions. How many of you have done this before? Vim motions. These are the key bindings that you can use in Vim or VI or whatever. And I'm trying to move more quickly as I move through the text editor. And well, anyway, it's not going well. Like, it was very awkward. I started last year, and there was a conference in Barcelona called, let me see, El Rapido, this one. There was a conference in Barcelona called Spring I/O, and one of the amazing advocates, over at JetBrains, a gentleman named Anton Arhipov. I wonder if he's here. Is he here? He's great, if you get a chance to go see him. Anyway, he did this talk called El Rapido, Coding Like Josh Long. Now, this is very awkward. This is very awkward because I'm not coding like Josh Long anymore, right? So anyway, imagine my embarrassment. So we have this now. And I want to build an application to support modularity, right? I want to build my application in such a way as to reduce the blast radius of change. That is to say, I want to scale the code base, not just the runtime, but the actual code base proper, right? So I'm going to design my code in such a way where if I add things, I don't accidentally create dependencies upon which other people can depend. I want to limit that, right? So I create a new package here called adoptions, and I'll create a new class in here called adoptions controller. By the by, can you see that? It's it's okay, right? It's bigger than a car up there. First problem. I'm a huge IntelliJ fan, but I do not understand what this word is. Why is that there, right? Remember, Java, the default in Java is package private. I think that's a very sensible default. Why does IntelliJ generate it publicly, right? You should have your types package private by default. It's good object-oriented design, right? You're using an object-oriented language. Things should be hidden. You should take advantage of information hiding. Excuse me. Excuse me. Just a little water for me here. You should take advantage of information hiding, right? So that way you have nice object-oriented code, and you only export that which you intend to export, right? You've got Java, right? If you want everything to be in a flat global namespace, just use C, you know? Be more honest with yourself. At least do that. Don't use Java and then make everything public. It's a waste of opportunity. So first things first, I'm going to remove the word public until I actually need it, unless I really need it. And even there, only under duress and only very, very limited, right? So now I'm going to create an entity to map to my database table, right? String name, description, and owner, okay? Now I'm using Java records here. I love Java records. Huge fan, okay? Huge fan, okay? Extends list of CRUD repository, managing entities of type dog whose primary key is of type integer. And I'm going to inject that here, and I'm going to create a constructor here that will allow me to change the owner. I'm going to adopt, in effect, the dog, okay? So dog ID, adoptions, let's say, void adopt dog. There we go. Int dog ID, string new owner name. And, you know, pretty straightforward, right? I'm going to just make this a path variable, make this a request parameter. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to say, okay, given, I'll find the dog if it exists. If it's there, I shall update it by writing it back to the database with the updated owner field, okay? Did that work? Did the AI know what I want? Yeah, it did. Look at that. Did I do everything else okay? It's not like weird. Yeah, it's okay. Good. So, okay, save. Oh, this AI is getting pretty great. Okay, here we go. And, you know, I can say that this is the adopted dog. I could print out adopted, saved, okay? Like this. There we go. All right, so there's our adopted thing. I'm doing data access. You know, in theory, I should move this out to a separate service, but just to keep things simple, I'll put it in one controller, okay? Okay, let's just see if that's working. Okay, up and running. Safari. I guess I need the command line here. So HTTP 8080 / dogs / 45 / adoptions. That's my favorite dog. I always like to do my demos in terms of my favorite dog, Prancer, right? This dog went viral a few years ago, right? The owner, back in 2021, during the COVID pandemic, was trying to find a new home for this dog, and she wrote this amazing ad about this dog. She says, okay, I've tried for the last several months to post this dog for adoption and make him sound palatable. The problem is he's just not. There's not a very big market for neurotic, man-hating, animal-hating, children-hating dogs that look like gremlins. But I have to believe there's someone out there for Prancer because I'm tired, and so is my family. Every day, we live in the grips of the demonic Chihuahua hellscape he has created in our home. And she continues on and talks about this poor dog. She says, I was excited to see him come out of his shell and become a real dog. I'm convinced at this point that he's not a real dog, but more like a vessel for a traumatized Victorian child that now haunts our home. And she continues on and on. This ad, she signs off. She says, oh, he's only 2 years old and will probably live to be 21 through pure spite. Oh, this poor dog, poor thing, right? And this dog, if you're wondering, yes, this dog got adopted, but not before going viral. So here's a People magazine talking about Prancer, the demonic Chihuahua. By the way, super cute, right? I'd pet that dog. I'd probably lose a finger, but I would pet that dog. Here's USA Today, a newspaper in the U.S. Chihuahua hates man, says New Jersey foster mom in viral Facebook post. Went viral. Very cute dog. Where's it? That's another one. Well, it's a Chihuahua. And then this. BuzzFeed. There you go. The internet is terrible. Can anybody use the internet? Has it ever? I just hate it. Okay, so anyway, there's the dog. Very, very adorable, right? And then, of course, here's the New York Times, right? Oh, stop it. Go. It's unusable. I don't know how people work on the internet. Okay, Prancer, the demonic chihuahua, finds a home. Okay, good. So this dog did go viral and did get adopted. So don't worry, it's okay. But we're gonna build a service to support adopting the dog of our dreams, or in this case, nightmares. Okay. So we go to the command line, and it'll be a post. I forgot about that post. And owner equals Josh. And let's just check the data store here. I forgot about that. One of my favorite features in IntelliJ. Look at that. Click the little button. Click on that. Click on test. Click OK. Click apply. Go over here. Refresh. My database. Tables. There's our dog, Prancer, right? And very surprisingly, no owner. Okay. So ID, Prancer 45, demonic, neurotic man hitting, animal hitting, children hitting dog that looks like a gremlin. Great. So we go back to the console here. Did that work? Oh, we have security still enabled. That's unfortunate. Look, if you leave this talk right now, don't take away from this talk that I disabled security, okay? Because I'm going to add it back in a minute. That's not the intent here. It's going to come back. Okay, here we go. Here we are. Take 5. Hey, good. And you can see adopted the dog. Now, is that real? I mean, is that how it works in most jurisdictions? You just update one column in one table somewhere? No, normally not, right? You have to have some process. You can imagine you might want to route the dog through the veterinarian, right? The veterinarian, of course, is a doctor for the dog, so we shall call it the dog tour, okay? And maybe I make this a service and I make it transactional. I say public void checkup int dog ID, and IO at print line checking up on this dog. And you can imagine injecting it into the other thing in the controller over here. I can just say dog tour dot checkup, and then this, and do the thing. Post. Oop, did I print anything out? Did I forget dev tools? Oh, that's so sad. Oh, I'll just do it manually. Okay, go again. Okay, and checking up on the dog. So that's worked. Great, but I don't know if that was the right design, right? Like this, it returns void. I don't even care about the dependency of this. I don't have no dependency on the outcome. It needs to happen, but it's not necessarily something I want to, busy this particular controller with. So I don't know if this is the right decision. And I want to decouple these two modules, these two root packages. So let's back out that change and instead work in terms of events. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create my first intentionally public type, dog adopted event. And I'll make this a record, and I shall publish an event from one JVM component to another using the Spring Framework application event publisher. So here's this, application event publisher, new dog adopted event. And now I can go back to the dog tour, and I can get rid of this. Don't need it, right? Got rid of that. And I don't need this either. I can just make it an event listener. And instead of that, I just listen for the event. So that is, these two things are actually public, but everything else is now packaged private. So they communicate in terms of these events. They're decoupled. At least, that's nice. Look at that. And it says checking up on the dog adopted event. So one side has communicated with the other without being explicitly dependent on it. And I think that's good, but are we completely decoupled? I don't know that that's true, right? So sleep, 5,000, let's say. Let's say that, throws exception. And then reload. I keep forgetting DevTools isn't there. And do the post again. And you can see I'm waiting for 5 seconds, right? I'm waiting for 5 seconds, so it's blocked. That's because it's being published in the same thread. And that's a simplifying assumption, especially if you have data access, you have the same transaction, the same thread. All that is very good. But I want these things to be decoupled. I could use async, but now if I have a transaction, well, I might lose the second part, even if the first part commits, right? So I don't know if that works. I don't like that approach. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Spring Modulith's infrastructure for sort of eventual consistency. And I'll couple that with some configuration here to restart outstanding events on restart. And I'm going to tell it to initialize the schema as true. Okay? And then I'm going to reload. And if I go over here and refresh, there's now a 6th table called event publication. Nothing in it just yet. Let's go ahead and change that. Post. Okay, and now you can see I've got an event. Listener ID is doctor.checkup. I've got the event type, the serialized event, the publication date, the completion date, and the completed status, and the completion attempts, and so on. Now, where's my dog tour thing? I got rid of the sleep. So that was dumb. Here we go. Sleep, 5,000. Okay. So now let's try this post one more time. It returns immediately And yet, you can see it hasn't finished the action. You haven't seen the output from the dog tour there yet. There we go, dog adopted event. So there's that, and we got this nice state machine that happened. So I publish it again, right, refresh, and it says processing. Nobody else will pick up this record while it's in this state. So it's even if you have multiple client, JVMs all pointing to the same database, eventually it gets finished and so on. That's called the outbox pattern. You're using a transactional table to reconcile non-transactional state. So I feel like I've done a good job. I've got eventual consistency. I'm decoupled. I don't know if I'm doing a good job, though. I'd like to have tests. So of course, let's just test it. Let's just write that little test here. .of adaption applications .class, okay, and am.verify, sure. I want to document. I should say document, but it doesn't. I want to print out the modules, okay? So let's just run this test, see that everything is good. Okay, there we go. And you can see Spring Modulith knows about the logical structure of my modules, of my 2 root packages, and their dependencies, and so on. It'll detect cycles. It'll detect, if you have nested packages that are leaking, public types into peer modules, adjacent modules instead of same module. It'll detect all that and break the build. And of course, even better, I've got documentation here. So I go to the Spring Modulith docs, click on that, and now I've got a C4 architecture diagram, plant UML architecture diagram, showing me the logical structure of my code base. This is much better than the status quo where some well-intentioned architect checked in a diagram from 2 years ago and hasn't updated it since, and it's long diverged from the state of the actual system in production, right? So I like Spring Modulith, but we got to show a bunch of other stuff, so let's move on. Modulith works with Spring Boot 4, okay? Better than ever. Okay, so we've got the adoptions. What about cat? We can't just have it can't just be a cat thing. So let's create a new package here called cat, and we'll create a new endpoint called cat controller. And I'll have this at controller, and I'll have an entity, or sorry, response body there. And I'm going to create an endpoint here that returns information about cats. Okay. And in order to do that, I'm going to call a web service and return the data from that web service. It's an open endpoint here. Facts, okay. Record cat fact, and then I'll return cat facts, okay. And in order to do this, I need a client. So I guess I can, you can imagine how this would go. I guess I could do a cat fact client, okay. And I would have cat facts. We'll come back to that in a second. And I can make this a component and then inject it, right? Private final cat facts client, add that there. This, okay, makes perfect sense. Now, how would I implement this? Well, you can imagine how this would go, right? It's not all that hard. Private final REST client, or you can use the REST template. Either way works for me. Add this there to the constructor, add that, and I would just say this.http.get.uri https www.catfacts.net/API. Retrieve body catfacts.class, okay? And, I think that'll work. Let's go ahead and try it. Oh, that was a test. Good to do, but not what I wanted. Okay, now, localhost cats, I think we just called it. It's calling the downstream service. There you go, okay? Cat information. But that client it wasn't so bad, but it's still more code than I want to write, especially since all I care about was this endpoint and this JSON structure. So instead, I could use declarative service clients. That's a feature we introduced in Spring Framework 6, right? Not 7, 6, like 3 years ago. But it wasn't always easy to use, especially for sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other kind of interfaces like this one, where it's just the amount of code is borderline, the same one way or another if you have to configure it, right? And so what I'm going to show you is I can create this endpoint like that. Does that still work? It's called cat fact client. Very good. Okay, so the code is compatible, and I've defined everything that is important about this interface. Now, in Spring Framework 7, you can add import, whoops, wrong one, HTTP services, like that, okay? So now, we go here, reload, okay, get the same result, nice content there, but it's very, very trivial to write these clients. And there's even a mechanism called groups And you can say, okay, this interface is paired with this REST client, which has this OAuth token, propagation interceptor, or whatever you want, right? You can get into more configuration, of course. Now, this has worked just fine. I've been doing this demo a long time, and this website has been a rock. It is just reliable as can be, and I am grateful for that. It's a good website about cool little critters. That said, everything fails, right? Everything fails. We learned this not once, but 2 times last year, right? 2 of the best run services on the internet went down. First, Amazon US East 1 went down. Arguably the best run data center on the planet, right? It's very hard for most people to find any fault with anything in that infrastructure, and yet it went down. So these things will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that's okay. We just have to write our code and write it in such a way to be more resilient. So to that end, I am going to enable resilient methods, right? Technically this and this should be on a config class. It doesn't really matter though, but they are activating features in the framework. So I've got resilient methods. This is a new thing in Spring Framework 7. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to annotate this method here with retryable. Now you might recognize at retryable, this comes from, or it was inspired by the Spring retry project, right? And so I'll create a legal state exception maybe? Yeah. And I'll say max attempts is 4, okay? So now I'm going to have an artificial failure here because this website is just too good. So atomic integer counter, okay? Voila. And I'll say if this dot counter dot get increment and get is less than 4, throw new illegal state exception, simulated failure. And actually, let's just log some information here. So io.println, simulated failure. Otherwise, retrieving facts, okay? So now we try that again and go to the browser, make a request. And notice I built that in so that I have some time to drink water. Hey, come back. Okay, so that's worked. We have our data. I go to the console. You'd see it simulated the failure. It tried, backed off a few seconds or whatever it was. I forget the default interval. But you can have it grow, so you don't get a stampeding herd problem, right? Okay, so that's good. We have this. This is good if you want to make sure that when you're dealing with flaky downstream services that you get a result eventually, because things are transient. Sometimes they're restarting a load balancer. Sometimes they're restarting a service. Sometimes there's a database connection issue or whatever. It gets resolved or whatever. Maybe some process took all the threads. These things often get fixed pretty quickly, so it's worth retrying. Okay. On the other hand, sometimes you've got services that fall over, right? This happens, right? How many of you have ever dealt with a downstream, like a PHP application, right? You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. You know. It's not going to do the job, right? So you want to make sure that it doesn't get overwhelmed. And one way to do that is at concurrency limit, right? Here, you can say that no more than 10 threads can enter this method, and therefore you won't be able to make more than 10 requests at the same time, right? Very, very convenient as well. So I like the convenience methods here. One thing, of course, as I'm making these network requests, you're going to want to enable virtual threads. Remember, Java 25 I recommend that you should start there. We recommend you should start there. If you're using GraalVM, and we are, then you have to use Java 25. GraalVM for Java 25 is the baseline. If you're using just the JVM, then you can use Java 17 in theory, but you should never use Java 17, ever, right? So I recommend virtual threads, and part of the reason is because in Java 24, they fixed an issue with thread pinning. There was a circumstance where if you were doing I/O on the network and you did a synchronization, and then did blocking I/O inside the synchronized block would end up pinning the thread to the actual carrier thread, so you wouldn't get the scalability benefits of virtual threads. So Java 25 fixed that. Not that you were doing that kind of a goofy thing anyway, but now, even if you were, it'll work. So I've got this as well. What else can I do? I've got, I've got cats, I've got resilience there, I've got the facts. Oh, we created that adoptions endpoint. What about dogs, right? What if we want to just read all the data about the dog? So let's go back over here. Where's my controller? And maybe I want to get information about the dogs in the database, okay? So let's try this. I'll create another endpoint here, right? Get mapping. Hello, dogs. And I'll say collection of map, of string, of object, list. and I'll say find all dot stream dot, hey, nice, oh, almost, to list, and maybe I want it to be like, maybe the field, I want to just return dog name, return this dot, okay? Is that going to work? I need to push this down and to an object so that the lowest common denominator is just object. Okay, okay, so now I've got this endpoint. Let's see if that works. Okay, localhost dogs. That's so sad. Oh, the owner is going to be null in certain cases. Well, fine. I don't need the owner. Whatever. So rude. All right. So there. That's worked. Okay? Good. But you know what? I do want the owner. The time has passed, and product management has come back and said, hey, fix it. So now I've got to create a new endpoint, but we've already got clients using this endpoint. I'm going to have to support 2 endpoints now, right? So I decide, okay, great. I've got 2 endpoint use cases, and I do want the owner. So this will be version 1.0. This is a new feature in Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. We have versioned API endpoints now, right? So this will be the version 1, and I can now create a new controller endpoint called dogs, version 1.1. And here, you know what? I'll just return the dogs directly, okay? And I'll say return all. And by the way, while I'm at it, let's have, actually, we can do this another way as well. We can have a request param, and it'll be optional. So I'm going to create an entity, I'm going to create a controller, not a repository method here, a finder method, to return all the dogs by their name, okay? Sorry, by name. So there you go. So that'll be a query that gets generated for me, and I'm going to export an option to honor that parameter if it's there. So I can actually do this, I think. Right? So if option, so I guess I can do optional, hello, owner dot if present, then I guess we just want to do a map, don't we? So map name, right? Or else we want to do a repository dot find all. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Looks like it's okay. Good. So I'm now cleaning up this code a little bit. I'm going to support the parameter if it's provided. Otherwise, I'll just return everything. Let's go ahead and try that out. Okay. So sad. What happened? Oh, I didn't specify the API version strategy. Let's do that as well. So versioning, MVC version. The thing I want to use to specify the version is a query parameter, and I'll call it, or maybe I'll make it a header. Header is x dogs version. Okay. There's different strategies. You can use query parameters, headers, context, path variables, whatever. I also want to specify a default version is 1.1. So absent the header, absent a particular specification, we'll default to the 1.1 endpoint. So now, go back to the browser, dogs. Now we get the new endpoint by default. But if I go to the console here, and by the way, if I go here and I say name equals Prancer, does that work? It does not. That is so sad. What was the parameter name that I had? Oh, owner. So sad. Okay. There we go. So I get Prancer if I specify the parameter name. But now, let's go back to the console here. And I don't know how to do that with HTTP, so I'll just use ye old curl, localhost 8080 dogs, right? And I'll say -h x dogs version 1.0 and pass that to the old JQ. There you go. I get the original version 1.0 version of the endpoint. Okay. So now you've got versioned endpoints. You've got resilience. You've got cat facts. You've got declarative clients. You've got modularity. We're moving quickly. Life is pretty good. I think it's now time to focus on getting this thing to production. And friends, at this point, it's always important to think about some of the table stakes that you have to think about when going to production. One of which is security, right? So I want to secure my application. And, remember I said I'm going to bring back in Spring Security? I meant it. Spring Security is amazing, right? Yesterday, I did a talk with my friend, the amazing, the inimitable, the legendary James Ward, and he and I looked at Spring AI, right? Which is also, by the by, you can get M2. That is compatible with Spring Boot 4. Anyway, we looked at MCP security, right? I think security is one of those things where if you get it right, it's a differentiator that you can charge money for. It's not just like a thing that's nice. It's a feature in of itself. Having a system that is secure is valuable, right? And security, it's everywhere. I mean, it's how you describe tenancy in a software system. So Spring Security, to me, it's a cliche, but you should start with security first, right? And so I'm going to add Spring Security to the program. I've got the security module here, and I've got WebAuthn. We'll come back to that in a second, but this is a new jar in Spring Security 7. Before, you had to kind of do it yourself. So let's go here. I'll do some security configuration. Okay. This will be a configuration class. And here, I want to create some users. And I happen to have a table full of users over here, I think. Yeah, see that? I've got Josh and James. And one of us, the users are encoded. You never want to have passwords at rest in the database unencoded, right? So I'm going to use the JDBC User Details Manager. This answers the questions of authentication, right? So I'll say return. There we go. And we'll do that, return that, and voila, okay? And then I also want to have, well, is that enough? I think that's enough. Let's just try that, actually. Let's create a simple hello world controller to confirm everything is working as expected. So controller, response body, me controller, okay? And we'll have me map string. I'm going to inject the principal, the current authenticated user. So map.of, there we are. Create that. So if I go to the browser, localhost, incognito window, okay, I get the saddest result ever. Right, okay, I have to configure. Why isn't that locked down automatically, actually? Did I reload the build? I did not. That's why. Spring Security was not in play. So sad. Okay, take two. There we go. So it's asked me to log in, right? And remember, I've got 2 users in the database. I've got this users table. This is a table whose schema lives in Spring Security. You can find it. It's open source. And there's an authorities table as well that gives me my permissions for each user, keyed by, of course, the username. And I've got a user, and my password is encoded using the algorithm called bcrypt. James, however, hasn't used this service in a long time, so he's using the distantly old, ancient, even older than Java 17 password algorithm called SHA-256, which, again, like Java 17, has no place in a modern software stack. So we're going to, I'm going to log in here, Josh, PW, and there you go, Josh. Okay, that worked. I'm authenticated. I'm in. What about James? Well, he's authenticated. He's in. But we still got that problem, don't we? We've got that, that password in the database. One of the nice things in Spring Security 7 is that you can very easily migrate the password once the user is authenticated, right? What we want to do is update the password, but the only time we have the plain text password is when the user authenticates and the server has the plain text password from the client, right? The server takes that plain text password from the client, encodes it using the algorithm whose name is in that prefix there, and then compares the encoded client password to the encoded password in the database. And if they match, we know it's the valid password and that is the correct credential for the user. But when that happens, I want to migrate on authentication. That's what this property will let us do. So let's go back to here. We'll / James. And remember, let's just go over here first. Where's my database? Users. So we've got these 2 users, SHA-256 bcrypt. James is about to log in. Okay. Go over here, refresh. Now they're both bcrypt, right? So password's bad, but if you're going to do it, make sure they're encoded. And if you're going to do it, make sure people are using the latest and greatest, right? Bcrypt, by the by, is the only dependency in Spring Boot and Spring Security that we have out of the box. All the other interesting algorithms require Bouncy Castle, or new in Spring Security 7, there's support for password for J. So there's actually now 2 different choices for the Argonne implementation, for example. Okay, so I'm authenticated. I got that, but it's still a password, and passwords, like I say, they're really bad. So let's customize my application. Normally, when you do security in Spring Security, you have to create a security filter chain. But the problem is that as soon as you do that, you end up, in effect, undoing what Spring Boot was doing. And this isn't good. So what I want to do is I want to change what Spring Boot is doing, but I don't want to overwrite it. I don't want to have to re-specify all the defaults again that Spring Boot would have otherwise provided for me. Because by default, Spring Boot does CSRF, CORS protection. It locks down all the endpoints. It has some default configuration just by dint of having added that dependency to the class path. So I'm going to use in addition to all that now, with this customizer, it's additive. I'm going to use one-time tokens. Now, one-time tokens are like magic links. You've seen these things before, right? You go to Slack, and if you go to Slack, click the link, you put in your email, it sends you an email out of band. You get the link in your email, your text message, or whatever, and you click and you're logged in. No passwords, right? Thank you. So we're going to say token generation success handler. Okay. Okay, there's this, and I'm just going to say print line, you've got, I'm going to say please go to, I'm not going to set up Twilio or SendGrid or whatever for you here. So I'll do console mail, okay? 8080 login OTT token equals one-time token dot get token value. And in the response, I'm going to get the writer dot print line. I'll say you've got console mail. I'm telling the user to go check their console, okay? Media type, text plain. And here we are, reload. So now I've got 2 ways to log in, username and password and this token, right? Type in Josh, send token, you've got console mail, thanks for that. Take this link, okay, copy and paste, back to the browser, enter the token, nifty, voila, authenticated, right? Nary a password in sight. Now, surely your Gmail or your Outlook account or your iPhone or Android text messages, surely there's a password required to get access to that. So by implication, there's still a password, but it's not your password. It's their problem, not yours, right? You're trusting that Google has figured out how to protect Gmail accounts so that when somebody gets an email by there, we can assume that if they have access to their email, they must be who they say they are, in the same way that you would have otherwise assumed that somebody with a password is who they say they are. I think access to their Gmail protected by Google is a much better signal of their authentication, of their authenticity, than just a password. Passwords are bad, right? Okay, so passwords are bad. I don't like passwords anywhere. Is there a better way? There is. One of the things we can use is WebAuthn. How many of you have heard of WebAuthn? Right? Okay, it's a thing created by the FIDO Alliance. You've heard of passkeys. That's a productized name of passkeys. Every website on the internet for the last couple of years has been prompting us to add passkeys. So now I go to passkey. You can see this is a group of different industry players, mom and pop shops, small companies, trying to make the web a better place. Little companies like Amazon, American Express, Apple, Bank of America, Google, Lenovo, Meta, PayPal, RSA, Swiss, Visa, Wells Fargo, Ubico, US Bank, all these little companies. And so it's already there. It works everywhere now. This isn't like a wouldn't it be nice hypothetical. It's already there. It works everywhere. It works on Linux, works on Mac, it even works on Windows. Windows. Couldn't believe it. Almost fell over. So let's add that to our system here. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add WebAuthn. And I shall configure it. I'll say C, allowed origins. Okay. There we are. And RP name, I'll just call it, actually we can just call it JFocus. Okay. RPID. RPID is localhost, actually. And let's restart. And so now I go to here, incognito window. I can log in with a passkey, but I haven't registered a passkey. Now, on the Mac, passkeys are stored by the passwords app, right? So I'm going to delete this one. Okay, goodbye. Now I have no passkeys. This is central for iCloud. If you're on the Mac, then you know everything's tied to your iCloud account. My laptop, my watch, my phone, my iPad, everything, right? So I can create the passkey on here and then use it as a public key anywhere else. So let's log in via one of the other methods. Then I'll go to WebAuthn register. Okay. Okay. Now, I can do the scan a QR code thing if I don't trust this device, but I do trust it. It's mine. So I'm going to use my Touch ID, my fingerprint. Okay. Ting. All right. So there's that, and now I have this new passkey in my operating system, which is stored in iCloud. Okay, now I go over here, new incognito window, enter. I log in with a passkey. Okay, and I can use my fingerprint now. Okay, authenticated. Now, again, this works. If I hit that same website on my iPhone, I would be using Face ID because it's tied to the public key of my iCloud account, not to a particular sensor, right? And so on. So, okay, so I've got all these different authentication mechanisms. All is very well and good, but I might need more than one. Maybe I want, thank you, I see it. I might want, for example, to require that there be multi-factor auth, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what is it, authorities, global factor, what is it, factor, granted authority. I'm going to require passwords and one-time tokens, for example. Right? And you can do this on a per endpoint basis. Maybe you have an admin screen that requires more permission or more sensitive data, so you want to have both a signal about a password and about the one-time token or something, or WebAuthn or whatever. So I go here now. Now I have to log in with one of these, and now I get routed to this. Isn't that convenient? Pre-filled that out. I get that, and I go to the console, and I take that, paste that in, sign in, and I'm authenticated. 2 factors, right? And remember, now that we have the ability to have more than one factor, the factors don't have to be very strong sometimes. You can have as many as you want. So you can have 2 very strong factors, like a passkey or a one-time token, and other factors that are informational but not decisive. Like, for example, you could have a factor, and we have this support, that says you must have logged in already within the last 10 minutes, right? Otherwise, we're going to force you to re-authenticate. Or a CAPTCHA. Does a CAPTCHA tell me that you are Josh or you are Jane or whatever? No, but it does tell me you're a human being, maybe. Well, that might change tomorrow with the way AI is going. So the point is, we can add these extra factors in addition to the ones that are already shipped out of the box, and they can be very useful. You can ask information and accrete this more full picture of who's authenticating and accessing the system. Okay, so I like this. I think it's ready to. I think we're ready to take this application to production. I'm going to turn it into a GraalVM native image, of course, and part of the new features in Spring Data is that we have the ability to take your Spring Data repository and turn it into to do code generation, in effect, during compilation. Now, I want to compile it into a GraalVM native image to go as fast as possible, but my perpetual problem, the bane of my existence, is that, of course, it just takes a long time. And so I do not like waiting for these GraalVM native image compilations. So a few years ago, I decided to try and fix it. I went to Oracle, and I said, Oracle, please play music during the native image compilation process. I said, I already hear elevator music in my head when I do these long-running compilations. I'd just like everybody else to hear it too. And I got some great responses, including this one from my friend, the good, the great, the inimitable, the amazing, Dr. Fabio Niephaus. He's a research manager on the GraalVM team at Oracle Labs. And he says, thank you for your feature request, Josh. The problem with playing music during the compilation is it's just fixing the symptoms, and we've been working on the cause. I go on. I have prototyped a -- Josh Long mode. So you click on that. You type in, use the native image compiler, which is the compiler behind the scenes. It's part of the GraalVM distribution of OpenJDK. There's native image -- Josh Long mode. This is a picture, but don't let that stop you from understanding and appreciating that at this point you're hearing music, okay? And you're like, where's the music coming from? Who did this to me? Why now am I having a stroke? And no, you're not. It says music brought to you by Josh Long. You're fine. You're calm like a cow, but you still want something to look at, something nice. So that would be a picture of me in my shirt. And I keep waiting for this to get merged. And well, anyway, it hasn't been merged yet. So Richard Fishner, a friend of mine, fellow Java champion, he took plight on my pity, and he created this amazing Maven plugin, the music Maven plugin, inspired by my plight. Right here's the GraalVM issue there. So we're going to use that to make my life and yours just that much better. Okay, copy and paste this. And by the way, he's at the conference, so if you see him, tell him thanks for this amazing, amazing plugin. So we'll put that in there. Oh, that's the Spotify support. Where's the main one? Here, this one. Ta-da. Okay, now, time to create a native image. Ta-da. Now, if you're using the Maven daemon, be careful, because every time you make a change to the build, the Maven daemon reruns the build, right? So this music just plays all day, right? Which may not be what you want. And by the way, you can see that custom code-generated repository here. Oh, music's gone. So sad. Sources, com. Where's my repository? Maybe it's, oh, it's adoptions, surely. Yeah. AOT repository. There you go. You can see it generated the repository, and it even code-generated the query using the underlying API. So you can actually step through this if you run the native image on the JVM, in the AOT code on the JVM. OK, so there's my native image. Start that up. Oh, port's already in use. So sad. Go there. All right, 0.13 seconds for an application that talks to the internet, has web services, is observable, has security, super, super scalable. It's got virtual threads. And here's the process identifier, returned in kilobytes, so divide by 1,000, 124 megs of RAM for a service that does all that. Now, I compare that. I want to bring your attention to this. I'm going to go here. Okay, this is Chrome. I never use Chrome, and there's a reason. This site is, by the way, this is using JavaScript, the bad kind, right? So, wait for it. There it is. 856 megs of RAM for one single JavaScript app. One JavaScript, the bad JavaScript, not the good. My friends, we live in an amazing time. An amazing time. We can do almost anything now, right? I talked about this yesterday in my conversation around AI, and now we have Spring Boot 4. We have the ability to build super scalable, robust, easy ergonomic, very, very friendly, very, very fast pieces of code and get them out in record time. We live in an amazing time. There has never been a better time to be a JVM developer or a Spring developer, and I hope I've so persuaded you of that. I hope you find your way to production using Spring Boot 4. Start that Spring today. Tuck, thank you so much. Everybody have a great day. Vote if you liked it. If you liked it, please vote.